What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I apologize for the noise. My air conditioning is running behind us. If you hear some racket in the background, that's just the AC running. So this has been a video I've been meaning to make for a while. And today what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you how to build a real simple 20-meter dipole. So this is for people that are brand new to this stuff and are trying to get on HF. This is going to be a single band 20-meter dipole. The concept is the same for any other band. You can also do a linked dipole, which is where you have multiple legs that are all connected with connectors. If you want to see what that's about, I've got a short on my channel with a linked dipole that I built for 20, 30, and 40 meters. But today, real simple, we're going to use a 20-meter dipole, one band. So I've got some components here. I've got my coax. I've got some line so I can string the antenna up. I've got some sticks so I can stake the thing out and get it up in the air enough. I've got a BNC binding post, and I've got some zip ties. You'll see what those are for in a minute. A couple connectors. You will see that I've got on the ground here, you'll see the orange throw line. It goes up into the tree up here. We're going to string the antenna up there. We have nano VNA so we can measure our SWR. I've got some cutters. Over here on the ground, you can see I've got a tape measure, and I've got a pair of crimpers. Those crimpers right now are actually weighing the wire down. You probably can't see the wire. It's little itty bitty black stuff right here in the ground. It's just happened to be what I had. I have some orange too, but I didn't have enough to do this, so it's gonna have to be black. It'll be hard to see on video, but that's all right. So what I've got right now is I've got this stretched out, so we're at about 17 feet 6 inches, okay? So I've got two strands here. So this antenna, when we're all done, is gonna be 33 and change feet long. So the way this math works is you're gonna take your frequency that you wanna work. In this case, it's gonna be 14 megahertz. And we're gonna multiply it, or I'm sorry, divide 468 by the frequency. All right, so we're gonna take 468 and divide it by, in this case, 14, which is 14 megahertz. And that gives us about 33 and a half feet. It's like 33.4 feet. All right, now you'll see I went a little longer. I'm at 17 and a half feet, so that's gonna be 35 feet long. You're better off making your antenna a little long and then trimming it than cutting it too short and having to add wire to it. You can do that, but it's a pain in the butt. So I've got two strands here. All right, running down to the 17 foot 6 inch mark. You can see the roll of wire there. That's just the cheap BN Tech Go stuff from Amazon, just cheap silicone wire. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set you guys up so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm gonna try to stay in frame the whole time. It's gonna be hard because I won't really be able to see the camera, but I am going to, let me get the tripod open here. I'm gonna try to do all this in real time. I'll try not to edit this video unless I absolutely have to, because I want you to see how long this actually takes to do. It's gonna take me a little longer because I've got to get the camera to stand up in the yard. So what I'm gonna do here is I am going to, and maybe, all right, there we go. So I'm mic'd up so you'll be able to hear me even when I walk away from the camera. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this wire right here. So now I've got two sections of wire here. I'm gonna go down to the other end. I'm gonna snip that guy off. Okay, so I now have two sections of wire that are about 17 and a half feet long. So, get my wire situated here so it's not unraveling. All right, so now we've got our two sections of wire. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna come over to the table here, and we're going to So we're going to take one end of our wire here, and we're going to strip it. Nope, one end's still attached to the tape measure. Give me a sec, let me untie that. I had it tied to the end of the tape measure so it wouldn't come undone. And now it's dragging the tape measure across the yard. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, you know what, I'm going to get this camera charging so it doesn't die on us. That would be unfortunate if the camera died mid-video. So, what we're going to do now is, after we get this charging, apologize for the camera moving around. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take both ends of this wire. We're just going to strip it back. So this is 24 gauge stranded wire. So I'm going to use my strippers. These only go down to 22, so might have to do a little finagling here, but this usually works. Oh yeah, it worked no problem. All right, so I've got my wire stripped back. So I'm going to go ahead and twist those around. Okay. Now before I go any further, I'm actually going to tie a couple of bowline knots in the end of this. You'll see why in a minute. So if you don't know how to tie a bowline, you make a loop, go through the hole, the rabbit goes through the hole, around the tree, and back through the hole again. If you don't know how to tie a bowline knot, you can look it up online. It's a pretty simple knot. It's very useful for a lot of different things. Whoops. Hard to do on camera so that everybody can see what I'm doing. Through the hole, around the tree, back through the hole, and I need to make sure I have enough tag ends so that I can, okay, so now I've got a loop on here. You'll see what that loop is for. I don't know if you can see that on camera or not. You'll see what that's for in a minute. Actually, I'm going to flip the screen up so I can see what I'm doing. Apologize if the camera's moving. Again, you can tell I'm not a professional at this. There we go. Now I'll be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've got one end stripped and I have a knot in it. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other end here. I'm going to make a loop. I'm going to tie my knot. Want to leave enough tag ends so that I have wire sticking out. Again, you'll see why in a minute. So when you're done, you're going to have a loop. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you're going to have a loop and then the tag end that's stripped. So I've got the same thing on both ends. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach some connectors to the end of this wire. So in this case, I just have a couple of crimp-on sort of U-shaped connectors. All right, I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're just simple U-shaped connectors. And I'm going to crimp one to the end of the wire on both wires. That guy in there. Sorry about the plane. I'm directly in the flight path of a small airport here, so I'm going to go ahead and crimp this guy on. I'm going to crimp this good. Okay. Feels good. Let's do our next one. Same thing. You could use eyes also, it doesn't matter. These just happen to fit the binding post. So again, I'm going to put that guy on there. Crimp it down good. Okay, there we go. So now what I've got is I've got two wires the same length with bowline knots in them and connectors attached. All right, so we're about ready to start building this antenna. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn you so I can go out in the yard here. I'm not in the way of the table. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my binding post, and you'll see I've got a couple of zip ties through the holes here, okay? So we're gonna need those zip ties in a minute. So I've already got a piece of string tied through the holes in this binding post. All right, that's how we're gonna hang this binding post. This is gonna be the antenna. This binding post, this BNC binding post, is gonna be the antenna. So it's a female BNC, and it's got two posts with screw terminals, okay? So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my first wire, it doesn't matter which one you do, I'm gonna loosen the nut, I'm going to put my connector under there and I'm going to tighten it down. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a zip tie to zip tie this loop to the binding post. That's going to give us some strain relief. So, go through the hole. I apologize if you can't see it on the camera. I'm going to go through the hole, and then I want to make sure that the loop is around the zip tie. And then we're going to zip tie this guy to the binding post. And again, this is going to give us our strain relief. That way we're not yanking on this wire, yanking it off the binding post. Zip this guy down. Okay. So now you can see if I yank on this, it's not pulling on the connector. All right. So I'm going to take my diagonal cutters and I'm going to snip the end of that zip tie off. If you really want to be sadistic and you want to mess with other people, cut it at an angle so they cut themselves. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the other one. So let me grab the other wire. If I can find it, it's on the ground here someplace. What did I do with it? There it is. So I'm going to take my other wire and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to tip you guys down a little bit. So I'm going to get my binding post. I'm going to put my zip tie through the binding post hole. I'm going to attach my connector. Snug that guy down. And I've got my loop. So I'm going to take our zip tie. We're going to put it through our loop from our bowline knot. You can do this a lot of different ways. Sometimes I tie the bowline directly through the hole in the binding post. That takes a little bit more knowledge as to how to tie bowline knots because you can't tie a standard knot like that. You actually have to start out with like a marlin spike hitch, but that's a little beyond the scope of this video. So get that guy snugged up. So now again, you can see I can yank on this and it's not putting any strain on the connectors. So I'm going to snip that guy off. I don't want to cut myself, so I'm going to cut those off flush. So now what we have is we have our BNC binding post. All right, and we've got leg number 1, leg number 2 with strain relief. Okay, so now I'm ready to start stringing this up and trimming. So I've already got the throw line in the tree. So I've got a bowline knot tied in the end of the throw line also. So I've got these little tiny black carabiner things. I got these on Amazon. They were like, I forget, less than 10 bucks for 100 of them. All right, I don't know if you can see that in my hand or not. They're tiny. They're just little spring clip plastic clips. These things are awesome. They're tiny, they weigh nothing. They're great for this kind of stuff. If you're trying to build really light antenna setups, these things are awesome. They work as insulators, they work as carabiners. So I've got one on the binding post. I'm just gonna clip that to the bowline. And I'm gonna start to hoist this up in the air. So let me turn you guys so you can see over here now. So I'm gonna be right here. Make sure you can see me in frame. Oh yeah, you should be able to see me. It's really hard to see on this little tiny screen. Oh yeah, you can see me. Let me turn you a little bit, bring you down just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna start hoisting this up in the air. I'm not gonna go all the way up yet, because whoop, there goes the camera, see? Like I said, not a professional. The wind took the camera down. Well then. Do we have audio again? No, we don't. Do we have audio? Audio? Nope. All right, be right back. All right, sorry about that. The wind blew the camera over. It's kind of breezy today, and I can't find a good spot to stand this camera up. Oh, I have an idea. Let's put it on top of my connector box. Let's try that, because that's nice and level. All right, let's try this. Sorry about that, folks. I got dogs barking in the background. That's all right. So now what I'm going to do, best laid plan. So I'm going to start hoisting this guy up in the air. All right, now I can't go all the way up because, so here's my binding post. I need to attach coax to this. So I've got 25 feet of RG316 coax here. So I'm just going to hook that up to the binding post. We're going to start sending this guy up. And see, that's going to drag the camera with it because the wires are around the charging wire for the camera. So let's get the antenna legs over this way. So this silicone wire is nice because it doesn't get tangled around stuff. It's not super strong, but it works well for this kind of stuff. Okay, so we're going to hoist this guy up in the air. Now in a perfect world, you would want your antenna a full quarter wave in the air. But that's not really feasible. I can't really get this thing, or half a wave in the air. I can't really get this thing a half wavelength in the air. That would need to be 33 feet, which I don't have the room for here. I don't have coax long enough out here. So we're up about, I don't know, 17, 18 feet, something like that. All right, so now I have my two legs of my wires here. I am going to use one of those little plastic carabiners on the end. And I'm going to loop it through here a couple of times, and that's going to give me slidable strain relief. Sometimes what I do is I will make these out of Kydex. I got dogs barking all over the place, man. It's hard to record out here sometimes. And then I'm just going to, see, is that going to work? It should. No, maybe not. Might have to tie a knot. That's the other thing with this silicone wire, is it is very slippery. So it's hard to get it to stick to itself. Yeah, we're just going to tie a knot. And then if I have to untie it, I can untie it, trim. You're going to see in a minute, we're going to be trimming this wire for length to get our SWR correct. So let me just tie a little bowline knot in the end of this, just so I've got something to attach my line to. Okay, there's one on that line, or that wire. I got one on this end. Okay, now I'm going to attach one of those little plastic carabiners to each one of these. Again, you could just tie the rope directly to it. This just makes it easier to disconnect and reconnect. Okay, now I need a couple pieces of cordage so I can string this antenna out. Not sure how that got wrapped around there. Oh, I see what's going on. There's a knot in this. This is figure-eighted, but they don't come undone very well when there's a knot in the line that's hanging up. So let me unfurl this. You won't be able to see me on camera here as I do this, but that's okay. So all I'm doing is unfurling this line. And then we're going to guy this antenna out. And we'll take our initial SWR reading. All right, so try not to get these too tangled around everything. You want to make sure everything stays separated. So there's number one. I'm just going to pull this out a little ways. All right. Get this line out in the yard here. This is way longer than it needs to be, but that's okay. So all I'm doing is unfurling that line and pulling it out. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to take my guy line, undo this guy. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Again, I want to make sure this isn't all wrapped around itself, and it is. So go around the coax so that everything's nice and free. There we go. Connect this guy. Okay, so now we can get this guy strung up. I think on this side, I'm just going to go to this big maple tree here. You can't see where I am, but I'll show you in a minute. I'm just going around this big tree a couple times to hold the antenna in place. It doesn't really need to be super secure because we're going to go up and down a bunch of times. But you want it up so that it's, okay, good. Let me get this other one strung up and then I will show you what I've got. Let me grab a stick that I've got here. About here will work. Get this guy driven into the ground. And Again, this doesn't need to be super secure. This is going to be up and down multiple times. So, just wanted enough to keep the antenna in the air. Now, one thing you've got to keep in mind is that your SWR may change when you move this antenna and you go from this area to somewhere else, and you set it up where the ground conductivity is different or it's up higher, it may change. Okay, so we're gonna get as close as we can. So what I've got, very hard to see here, but you can probably see in the air right here. So there's the end of the antenna and that little carabiner. And I've just got the string wrapped around this big maple tree, and it goes up in an inverted V to the binding post, and it comes down over here. I just sharpened a stick and stuck it in the yard and did the same thing over here. Okay, so the end of the antenna is right there. Okay, so got to set up in an inverted V. So now what we need to do is we need to take our initial SWR measurement. So you're going to need something to measure SWR with. Now, I'm going to be doing this with a nano VNA. You could use a rig expert. If your radio can do this, you can do it with the radio, although it's really kind of a pain to do with the radio. I've done it before. The first antenna I ever built, I used the SWR sweep on my G90 to do. In fact, it was one of these exact antennas. It was instead of using individual wire, it was a speaker wire antenna. And so I just took like 35 feet of speaker wire, 17 feet, split it, did the same thing. So you probably, I know you're not gonna be able to see the screen on the Nano VNA. It's entirely too bright out here, but I will. So I gotta put this on 20 meters, recall 20 meters. Okay, so we are currently much too long. All right, so right now I'm at about 2.8 to 1 SWR. All right, again, you're not gonna be able to see this screen. It's gonna be too washed out. But let me go ahead and lower this antenna. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit off each end and then do the same thing again. And I'm gonna continue to do that until I get my SWR satisfactory. So I'm gonna lower this BNC binding post some, put a little slack on my antenna. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come over here. Whoop. So here's the end of the antenna right here. So all I'm gonna do is take some length off of this. You wanna do this in little increments. So let me unhook this. You want to take the same amount off each side. You can measure it. A lot of times what I will do is I will just go like the length of my hand or less. So like right now, I'm gonna do to the middle of my palm. So it's not very much, it's about 3 inches. And we're gonna have to do this several times. But I'm gonna clip that off right there. Cut that off. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. I'm going to use that as a template so I know how long to cut. Put my knot back in. Put that back up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the other side and we're going to do the same thing. And like I said, we have to do this multiple times. In fact, I can guarantee we will, until we get this SWR satisfactory. All right, so I'll try to do this in frame, but it may not be the easiest thing to get in frame here. Please don't tip over. No matter where I put this camera, it wants to fall over. There we go. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Okay. All right, so now we've trimmed it. So now, let's head back over, see what our SWR looks like. Let me hoist the antenna back in the air. All right, I'm gonna come back over here, run this antenna back up in the air. Okay. So the antenna is hoisted back up. Hook us back up to the Nano VNA. Let's see what our SWR looks like now. We'll probably have to do this several times to get it dialed in. Something's wrong here. Oh, duh, it's on 40 meters. I'm like, why is my SWR 13 to 1? Okay, so we're moving down. So before we were at 2.8 SWR, now I'm at 1.97 SWR. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing again. I'm gonna take the same exact amount off again. We'll try it again. So let me go ahead and lower this antenna. And again, I apologize that I'm not in frame. It's very hard to do this by yourself without a camera person. So I'm doing the best I can do. All right. So we're gonna do the exact same thing again. So I'm gonna come back over here. And I'm going to take the exact same amount off. So I've got the pieces that I cut off here. I'm gonna do the exact same thing, the exact same amount. So I'm gonna come over here. Now, if you've got wire that will stick to itself, you can just keep twisting it back. Like you can twist it back on itself to shorten it up, so you can just come back and then twist it around. This wire won't really stick to itself, so that doesn't work. If you're using speaker wire, that actually works just great. All right, cut the exact same amount off again. Okay. So there's one. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm just gonna turn the camera. I'm not gonna carry it over there. We'll go over there. I'm gonna do the same exact thing. So I've got my Nano VNA set up for the bottom of the band being 14.025, which is the bottom of the general portion of the data and CW portion of the band. If you want it for voice, if you want to do phone, you're going to want to cut the antenna a little shorter. Again, when you do your math, do 468 do 468 divided by whatever the frequency is. So if you're at, let's say you want the middle of the band like 14,300, something like that. Divide 468 divided by 14.3, and you're gonna find that that's a little shorter. In fact, I can do the math right now and I'll tell you what it is. So if you're doing phone, obviously, like I said, you're gonna need the antenna to be a little bit shorter because the frequency is a little higher. So let's see, in that case, we would be 468 divided by 14.3, be like 32.75 feet for each leg. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go back up again. So I'm actually going to leave you guys kind of right where you are. I'm going to go over and pull that antenna back up, and then we'll come over and take another measurement. So back up. Put our antenna back up in the air again. Okay. Let's do it again. Turn our Nano VNA back on. Put it back on 20 meters. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm at 1.244 to 1 SWR right now. All right, so I'm actually gonna take a little bit more off because I'm at the very bottom of the band. So that took us down about, what'd that go, about 0.7 SWR. So I'm gonna trim it a little bit shorter now. I'm only gonna take an inch or two off each side. Now is when we gotta do fine tuning. Usually it takes 3 or 4 trims to get it where you want it. So I'm gonna go ahead and lower this back down one more time. All right, let's trim it up one more time, but this time I'm gonna take a small amount off each end. So I'll start over on this end so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right. I probably won't turn the camera to do the other side since you guys have already seen me do this, so you know what I'm doing. So we're gonna disconnect our antenna and untie my knot. Okay, so let me grab one of the pieces I just cut off, stuck them in my pocket. So I'm gonna do like half of that. So I'm gonna take one of these, I'm gonna fold it over. Okay. Tie the knot. Now keep in mind, hold on. Keep in mind when I'm tying these knots, that's actually shrinking the end of the antenna a little bit. It's shortening it a little bit. So you want to keep the knots the same, roughly the same size on both ends, and you want to tie them the same basic way every time. Again, I'm not going to turn the camera so you can see the other side. You've already seen me do this, so. All right. Untie our knot. So I wanted to do this in real time. I didn't want to edit because I want you to see how long this actually takes. All right, you'll see people do it online and it's a 5-minute video. That's not reality. This takes a little bit of time to get everything dialed in where you want it. So we'll tie our knot back in, trying to keep it roughly the same size as it was before, same length as it was before. Okay, clip it back on. All right, let's hoist our antenna back up and see what we've got. Go back up one more time here. Okay, tie it off. Okay, let's see what we've got for SWR. So we'll take one more reading, we'll see what we've got, and so up to about FT8, I'm 1.27. It's still a little bit long, but I'm gonna leave it for right now. And what I'm gonna do to see how well we actually did is let's hook it up to a radio. See what the radio says. We will attempt to make a contact. Now, it is the middle of the day and I'm gonna be on 20 meters and I'm gonna be at 6 watts. So the chances of us actually being able to work anybody are not very high. Middle of the day in the summer on 6 watts. We've got our FTX1, which has got an SWR meter on it. Hook our coax up. Let me grab my CW key and a CW key cable. I actually just got back from doing an activation at Oakley Corners a little while ago, so I already had all this stuff pretty much ready to go. So I'll grab my key. So I'm using the same key I was at Oakley Corners, so we've got our nameless. Let me flip the screen back up so I can see what I'm doing. Again, I apologize for all the wiggling around. Okay. All right, so we got our rig, we got our key. And again, if you were doing phone, you would just trim this antenna a little shorter, but the premise is identical. Just turn the radio on. I didn't bring a chair out, that was dumb. Oh, hearing stuff on 40 meters. So we need to change our band. Go to 20 meters. I'm gonna go to like 14.050. Okay. I'm gonna turn my level up a little bit. There we go, we're seeing some hash. Turn my key speed back up. Now I can't call CQ as myself because I'm still, I still have a spot, an activation on POTA app, and I don't want it to think I'm still at the park, so. Oh, key stuck. All right, I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see this or not, but here's the SWR meter, oops. Here's the SWR meter on this radio right here. So if you watch that needle, it doesn't move. So we are 1-to-1 at 14.05. All right, now the nano VNA said, well, about 1.2. Radio's happy, okay? So just for giggles, let's see if we can hear anybody or work anybody. So let's check the POTA spots page. I doubt anyone will be able to hear me. Let's see, Texas on 68. Oh, there's somebody right there. I don't know who that was. 67, that's Missouri. We might be able to hear that. No. Nope. Yep. We can hear him. Let's try to work him. I don't know if he'll be able to hear us. No, he's working somebody else. Like I said, I'm not sure if he'll be able to hear us or not. 6 watts middle of the day on 20 meters in the summer. That's going to be a hard bargain. WB0TUA. We'll try to work him. N4 something, he's really weak. Florida. Jeez. Woo. Okay, well, the antenna works. Wow, that was loud. I don't think he's going to be able to hear me. But anyway, we're 1-to-1 SWR. As you can hear, we're picking up all sorts of stations. It's not an issue. You can see 20 is fairly dead right now. Again, middle of the day in the summer, 20 is not amazing usually. All right, yeah, there's not much of anything on the band. That doesn't really surprise me. But at any rate, you can very clearly see that it works. You know, we've got a 1-to-1 SWR. We're picking up stations. You know, if it was the middle of the winter, I'd probably be able to work him. If I had a little bit heavier gauge everything and I was running more power, I'd probably be able to work him. It's not the fault of the antenna. It's just a matter of being like literally noon. What time is it? It is 12:16, so it's right in the middle of the day, and it's July 6th. So the bands are in rough shape. Every summer, they get like this in the middle of the day. There's just not, the propagation is not very good. 40 meters this morning was in really good shape, but again, middle of the day, middle of the summer, you're not going to get much. But at any rate, you can see it wasn't that hard to put up, right? Measure your wire out, strip the ends, crimp some ends on it, make some strain relief for your BNC, hoist the thing in the air, tie some knots on the ends, put your lines out, get your antenna strung up, take your initial measurement, and then lower it and trim in little increments until you get that SWR down to where you want it. And you can see, according to the Nano VNA, I was about 1.2 to 1. Radio says I'm 1 to 1. Whatever. If the radio's happy, I'm happy. And this is a resonant half-wave 20-meter dipole, so this is going to be an efficient antenna. So hopefully that was helpful for any of you new folks. This is really all there is to it. You can use any wire you have. It doesn't matter what it is. This is just wire I had kicking around from building other antennas. You can go down to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a roll of speaker wire, or on Amazon and buy some wire. Doesn't matter what you use. Those binding posts, you can get them on Amazon for, I don't know, a few bucks. They're not expensive. Let me turn this volume down. So, you know, you can build an entire antenna. If you've got scrap wire, a couple bucks for a binding post, and you're on the air. That's really all it takes. The first antenna I ever had, in fact, it's in the garage right now, was an antenna just like this, but I made it out of speaker wire, like 18 gauge speaker wire with a BNC binding post. It was a 20-meter antenna. I worked all over the place on that thing. And then I built a 2040 link dipole out of speaker wire, and that was my main shack antenna for a year until I put up the random wire that I have up now. So these things work, and they're super easy to build. They're inexpensive to build. The activation I did this morning, I was on a 20, 30, 40 link dipole, and on 6 watts, I had no problems at all doing an activation. So it doesn't take a lot to get this done. Play with this a little bit. You can cut different length dipoles for different bands. One of the nice things is if you make it so that you can disconnect the antenna from the BNC binding post. A lot of times what I'll do is I will put loops of wire around the binding post and then use those little carabiners to attach the strain relief so you can pop the antenna leads on and off real quick. So you can use one binding post with multiple size antennas. So I've got like 40, 30, 20, I've got a 17, a 15, I don't have a 12, I've got a 10, I've got a 6. And again, like I said, you can make link dipoles. The same idea, you're just cutting the wire and you're putting links in so you can disconnect them and change the length of the wire. So anyway, everybody, hopefully that was helpful, especially for some of you newer folks who are just trying to get on the air, or if you're trying to build an antenna and you want something for emergency use, a simple dipole will get the job done. What I'll tell you is for emergency use, you're probably not going to want a 20-meter dipole. You're probably going to want a 40-meter, which is going to be twice the length of this, about 66 feet. Because you're going to be working primarily NVIS, near vertical incident skywave, local to regional communications, you know, ground wave out to maybe 600 miles. You know, 20 meters in close isn't going to do any good generally unless it's ground wave. So if you're looking for something for emergency use, I would go a full 40 meters. Or you could do a link dipole so you can work 40 and 20. But in any event, everybody, that's really all there is to making one of these things. They're very simple. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. Please keep, as I always say, please keep the comment section civil. You know, as long as you are civil, I will respond civilly. Again, hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully it wasn't overly complicated. Hopefully you could see what I was doing. The math is pretty basic. Like I said, 468 divided by whatever frequency you want to work. That'll give you your rough length. Always start a little bit longer and then trim back. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, as always, 73.